There's an article in the New York Times today laying out the quandary, as they put it, of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Their concern is, how is she going to please both Main Street and Wall Street on the issue of economics? So let's break this down. First, the part that's positive, they report that the campaign is going to embrace issues like, quote, raising the minimum wage, investing in infrastructure, closing corporate tax loopholes, and cutting taxes for the middle class. So at least on that front, we can say, okay, Hillary Clinton is kind of your standard centrist Democrat. She's very close to where her husband is on the political spectrum and where Obama is on the political spectrum. But then we have to dive a little deeper. So who are the economists that she's taking advice from, and her entire future campaign is taking advice from? Quote, well, Robert Reich is one of some 200 economists and academics who have offered Miss Clinton ideas and guidance as she settles on an economic doctrine. Several of Mr. Clinton's former advisors, including Alan S. Binder, Robert E. Rubin, and Mr. Summers, maintain influence. But Mrs. Clinton has cast a wide net that also includes Joseph Stiglitz, Alan B. Kruger, and Peter Orszag, and Teresa Ghilarducci. So for those of you who don't know too much about the real nuts and bolts of politics and economic policy, and I wouldn't expect many people to know a lot of those names there, but to put it as simple as possible, half of the people who she's taking advice from are true progressives. Robert Reich is one example of that. And then the other half is the pro-corporatist, pro-establishment sellout wing of the Democratic Party. So in other words, the people who were the advisors to her husband and some of the people who were advisors to Obama and still are advisors to Obama. But overall, like I said, it's about 200 people, 200 experts who are giving her advice. So my guess, if I had just that information and I had to pick, well, which direction is she going to go in if she were elected president? My guess is that she would pull in Obama. And what she would do is she would bring in some true progressives and then dismiss everything they say. Because that's what, I mean, the records from what Obama did post the stock market crash and the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession, when he had meetings, he would have progressives with him and he would have the corporatist centrist people who said, don't fundamentally change the structure of the system, keep it as it is and just bail people out and do stuff like that. And Obama pretty much folded like a cheap lawn chair and agreed totally with the Clinton-era style centrist Democrats and pro-corporatist Democrats. And that's the vibe that we're getting now from Hillary Clinton. But there's further evidence in the article. So they hint at that conclusion too. They say, quote, Hillary Rodham Clinton is trying to answer what has emerged as a central question of her early presidential campaign strategy: how to address the anger about income inequality without overly vilifying the wealthy. Now that's fascinating, because why would that be a concern to you? I mean, why is that something that you're conscious of and you're aware of and you're trying to avoid? Well, perhaps it has something to do with the fact that over the years you've taken hundreds of millions of dollars from Wall Street and from other big money interests, so they're your buddies, so you don't want to overly vilify them. You want to appeal to Main Street and your average worker and your average American, but also make sure you still get the financial backing from the people on Wall Street. They continue, quote, Mrs. Clinton has spent the past few months engaged in policy discussions with economists on the left and closer to the Democratic Party's center, who are grappling with the discontent set off by the gap between the rich and the poor. Again, so these are just more little clues that they're dropping throughout the article, whether it's they don't want to overly vilify the wealthy, and, oh, she's talking to economists from the center. These are all code words. If you know politics well, you know what that means. Pro-establishment, pro-corporatist, exactly like the Obama administration, exactly like Clinton's administration. They also say behind many of these proposals is a philosophy referred to as inclusive capitalism that contends that a majority of Americans do not want to punish the rich. They just want to feel that they, too, have a chance to succeed. Okay, here we go again. Now, a lot of people might hear me talk about that and say, Kyle, I don't understand. I thought you yourself say you're in favor of a very liberal form and regulated form of capitalism. That's true, but as I've repeated on the show time and time again, within the context of American politics, you don't want somebody who's going to up front say, oh, I would like an inclusive capitalism, and I don't want to punish the rich, because then what that means is their starting position in all the negotiations and the debates with the Republicans is going to be that centrist, corporatist establishment position, and then they will fold from there, as history has shown us time and time again, whether it be with Bill Clinton or whether it be with President Obama. So you don't want somebody who's going to come out front and say these things and say, I'm a centrist, I want inclusive capitalism, because then where do you go in the negotiations? Further to the right. On the contrary, what you want in American politics is somebody to the left of you. I would love to vote for somebody to the left of me. I would love to vote for a socialist in the United States of America, because if they stick to that position and then they have to negotiate with the Republicans, the compromise position may be social democracy, which is what I'm actually in favor of, which is that very liberal, regulated version of capitalism. So again, these are all hints, these are all clues to the direction that she's leaning behind the scenes here with everything that's going on in terms of getting ready for her campaign. And again, I would even go a step further and say, yeah, these are hints, these are clues, but she's not really conflicted about it. Like, oh, do I go with the progressives or do I go with the centrists? No, in her mind, it's, well, I'm going to be like Obama, I'm going to be like my husband, and I'm going to be an establishment Democrat, because that's how the game is played. This is how it works. You take all the money from Wall Street, and then you lie to the American people and say you're only looking out for them as you service Wall Street behind the scenes. And remember, it was an article not that long ago when we learned that Hillary Clinton took $200,000 to speak at Goldman Sachs and to speak at Wall Street firms and give a speech. Now, why do you think that is? Do you think they're doing that because Goldman Sachs is genuinely interested in what Hillary Clinton's personal feelings are on the marginal tax rate and on the future of Social Security? Fuck no, it's a bribe in advance. And it was two speeches, each one was worth $200,000. She made $400,000 just from speaking to Goldman Sachs and people at Wall Street. Who do you think she's going to listen to if she gets elected? But here's the most telling part, quote, Dean Baker, an economist and co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, has pushed the idea of a government fee on the sale or purchase of certain financial assets, which he believes could hold Wall Street accountable while funding social services. So this is something he proposed. He's one of these 200 economists that's talking to Hillary behind the scenes. He proposed this to her and her people. Quote, Clinton's people didn't want to go near it, Mr. Baker said. So here's a mildly progressive idea that was proposed to Hillary and her people behind the scenes. And they, quote, didn't want to go near it. If you're wondering how Hillary Clinton would govern, I would say, at best, exactly how Obama and Bill Clinton governed, but it's more likely she'd be a little bit to the right of them, which would be much, much worse. And understand, it's not just me that's saying it, it's all the evidence from today's article in the New York Times.